Hey, welcome back. Before we get into this one, do me a small favor. If life's ever quietly convinced you that your best years are already behind you, hold on to that feeling while you listen, because today's story is about a woman who believed exactly that. Her name's Rachel, 38, divorced, an empty house, a son off at college, and one nervous little decision to put herself back out there again. What she couldn't have known is that decision would come walking right through her own front door on a Friday night. This one's uncomfortable, it's tender, and I think a lot of you are going to see a piece of yourself in her. So get comfortable, and let's let her tell it.
The front door opened, and my whole life just stopped. It was a Friday. My son was home from school for the weekend, and he'd texted me that morning. "Mom, I'm bringing my roommate, hope that's cool." And I said, "Of course, honey, I'll make too much food, I always do." And I did. I made a pot roast big enough for 6 people, because that's what you do when your kid finally comes home after being gone half the semester. And then the door opened, and Tyler walked in, grinning, dropping his bag on the floor like he's still 12 years old, and he goes, "Mom, this is Ethan, the roommate I keep telling you about." And I looked up from the stove, and it was him. Okay, let me back up, because if I just leave it there, you're going to sit there and fill in the worst version of this in your head, and honestly, the worst version would be easier to explain than the truth. So let me start at the beginning. Let me tell it right. My name's Rachel Doyle. I'm 38 years old, and I live in Westerville, just outside Columbus, Ohio, in the same little 3-bedroom house I've been in for almost 12 years. I manage the front office at a dental practice. I run the schedule, I fight with the insurance companies, I hold the hands of grown men who are terrified of a cleaning. It's a good job. It's a quiet life. Emphasis on quiet. Here's the thing you need to know about me. I had Tyler when I was 18. 18. I was a baby having a baby. Me and his dad, Greg, we were high school sweethearts, and I got pregnant senior year, and we did the thing you were supposed to do back then. We got married. Cap and gown 1 month, courthouse the next. And I spent my entire 20s being somebody's wife and somebody's mom. I never got the part in between. You know the part I mean. The part where you're just a person, where you figure out who you are before you belong to anybody. I skipped that. Went straight from my parents' house to Greg's last name, to diapers and school pickups and packing lunches. And I don't regret Tyler. God, no. He's the best thing I ever did. He's 20 now, if you're doing the math. Yeah, I had him at 18. He's 20. Do that arithmetic and hold on to it, because it matters later. He's a good kid. Kind. Funnier than me. Off at a state school a couple hours south, and I am so proud of him I could burst. But Greg and I, we ran out of road. About 4 years ago now. There wasn't some big dramatic thing, no affair, no screaming. We just looked at each other one day across the kitchen and realized we'd been roommates for a long time. We got married because of a due date, not because of a love story. And by the time Tyler was in high school, there was just nothing left in the tank. So we split. Amicable, everybody says. Amicable. Such a clean word for something that leaves you that hollow. And then Greg moved on fast. New girlfriend within the year. Engaged now. The whole thing. And I was happy for him. I really was. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't do something to me. Watching the person you spent 20 years with just start over. Like it was easy. Like you were a chapter he was glad to be done with. So there I was, 36, then 37, Tyler off at college, and this house got so quiet. I don't think people warn you about that, the silence when the kid leaves. I'd cook dinner out of habit and then remember there was nobody to cook for. I'd hear a noise upstairs and my heart would jump. Tyler? And then I'd remember, just the house settling, just me, My girlfriends kept telling me, Rachel, you gotta get back out there. You're still young. You're still... And they'd do this thing. They'd say, you're still attractive. Like it was a fact they had to reassure me of, which, let me tell you, does wonders for the confidence. But I fought it. For a long time, I fought it. The idea of dating at 37 felt humiliating, like showing up to a party a decade late in the wrong clothes. And then one night, I'd had a glass of wine, maybe two. I downloaded one of those apps. As a joke, almost. I told myself I was just going to look. Just see who was out there, window shopping. I didn't even put a real picture up for the first week. I was a coward about the whole thing. But eventually, I filled it out. Real photos, real age. I put 38 right there, I didn't lie. Some women shave a few years off, and I get it, but I couldn't. I just wrote the truth and figured, whatever happens, happens. And for a couple weeks, not much happened. A few messages from men my age or older, divorced dads, a guy who only wanted to talk about his boat, a man named Dale who sent me a picture of a fish the size of his torso as his opening line. Just the fish. No words. I still think about Dale sometimes. And then Ethan messaged me. Now, his profile said 22, and I saw that, and I want you to know, my first reaction was to close the app. 22, that's a kid. That's practically Tyler's age. I actually laughed out loud, alone in my kitchen, and I thought, honey, you have got the wrong window. Go find someone your own age. But he'd written something, and it wasn't, hey, it wasn't a fish. He'd actually read my profile. I'd written this dumb little joke in there about how I make the world's most mediocre lasagna, and I'm at peace with it. And he wrote back this whole thing about how confidence in the face of mediocre lasagna is the most attractive quality a person can have. And did I salt the water for the noodles? Because that's where most people go wrong. And I don't know, something about it. It was funny. It was disarming. It wasn't trying to be anything. So I wrote back. Just to be polite, I told myself. Just one message. And that one message turned into a conversation that lasted 4 months before we ever met in person. 4 months. I need you to sit with that, because this is the part people don't understand when they hear 38-year-old woman, 22-year-old guy. They picture something cheap, something fast. And it wasn't. It was the slowest thing I've ever been part of. We just talked. Every day. He'd text me in the morning. Good morning. Hope the insurance companies lose today. And I'd text him at night. And somewhere in there, it became the best part of my day. The thing I looked forward to. I'd catch myself smiling at my phone at the front desk, and one of the hygienists would raise an eyebrow at me, and I'd just feel 16. In the good way. In the way I actually never got to feel at 16, because at 16 I was already halfway to being somebody's wife. There was this one night. I remember it because it's the night I stopped pretending it was nothing. It was probably 2 a.m. I had work in 5 hours, and we were texting about, of all things, the ocean. He'd never seen it. 22 years old, and he'd never once in his life seen the ocean, grew up landlocked and broke, and he said it so plainly, no self-pity, just, yeah, never made it out there. And I found myself typing out this whole thing about the one time Greg and I took Tyler to the Carolina coast when he was little, and how Tyler screamed the first time a wave touched his feet, and then wouldn't leave the water for 3 hours. And Ethan wrote back, I'd like to see that someday, the ocean, maybe with somebody who already loves it. And I put the phone face down on my chest, and I lay there in the dark, and I thought, oh no, this is not nothing. This stopped being nothing a while ago, and you just didn't want to look at it. That was the night I knew I was in trouble. And the truly damning part? I didn't stop. I texted him back. I told him about the ocean. And yes, I knew how old he was. I want to be really clear about that because I've turned it over in my head 1,000 times. I knew he was 22. He knew I was 38. Neither of us was hiding a single thing about that. Two adults, both of us grown, both of us knowing exactly what the number said. I wasn't confused, and he wasn't confused. What I was ashamed. That's the honest word. I was ashamed of how happy it made me. I'd lie in bed and think, "Rachel, what are you doing? You are a grown woman. He is younger than..." And I couldn't even finish the thought, because the comparison that kept trying to form was one I did not want in my head. He's closer to your son's age than to yours. I'd think it, and then I'd shove it back down, because it didn't feel like that. When we talked, the years just weren't in the room. He was thoughtful in a way that surprised me. Old for his age, I told myself. Raised by his grandmother, lost his mom young, had to grow up fast. He listened. Do you know how long it had been since a man actually listened to me? Greg stopped listening around year 8. Ethan listened like what I said was worth writing down. So we finally met. Coffee. A little place downtown, neutral ground, and I nearly canceled 3 times in the parking lot. I sat in my car and I thought, you're going to walk in there, and he's going to take one look at you in the daylight and realize you're a mistake. 38 in a coffee shop light is not 38 in a filtered photo. And I walked in, and he stood up, and he had this look on his face, this look like he couldn't believe I was real either. And we sat down, and we talked for 4 hours. 4 hours! They had to basically sweep us out when they closed. And that was it. That was the beginning of the actual thing. I'm not going to narrate what came next. That part's mine. I'll just tell you that it became something real, the way things do between 2 people who keep choosing each other. It was months. It was quiet, and it was hours, and nobody knew about it. Not my girlfriends. I couldn't imagine their faces. Definitely not Tyler. I kept it in a separate box in my life, this little sealed room, and I told myself as long as it stayed in that room, it wasn't hurting anybody. Here's what I didn't know. Here's the thing that was sitting right there the whole time, and I never saw it. Because why would I? Ethan went to the same school as my son. The same school, 2 hours south. And I knew Ethan was a student, of course I knew. But it's a huge school, thousands and thousands of kids, and Tyler's world and Ethan's world were 2 completely separate boxes in my head. It never once occurred to me to hold them up next to each other. Why would it? To me, Ethan was the man I met on an app. Tyler was my son. Different rooms, different lives. And on the app, I was just Rachel, first name. My maiden name's not on there. My last name never came up between us, the way it doesn't when you meet someone that way. You learn a person's soul before you learn their paperwork. So Ethan never knew my last name was Doyle. He never had a reason to. And Tyler had gotten a new place that fall, moved off campus into an apartment with a couple of guys, and he'd mentioned it to me, sure. He'd said, "I've got new roommates, Mom, they're cool." And one time he might have even said the name Ethan, honestly. But do you know how many names your college kid throws at you? Dozens. Brody and Jalen and Coop and somebody's girlfriend named Madison. I never met any of them. Never saw a picture. Ethan's a common enough name. It went in one ear and dissolved. And here's the timing that makes it almost cruel. Ethan and I started talking before Tyler ever moved in with him. Before they were even roommates. So there was never a moment where the wires could have crossed. By the time my son and Ethan became friends, became close apparently, Tyler talked about him like they'd known each other for years, Ethan and I had already been us for months. 2 boxes, never touching. Until Friday. until my son walked through my front door grinning and said, "Mom, this is Ethan, the roommate I keep telling you about." And I looked up, and there he was, in my doorway, in my house, holding a bag of groceries he'd insisted on buying because Tyler told him I was cooking, standing there next to my son, and I watched the exact same thing hit his face that was hitting mine. The blood just left him. I saw it go. This gray, this stillness. He knew. In that half second, he knew, and I knew, and the two of us stood there in my kitchen with the pot roast going and my 20-year-old son between us, absolutely radiating happiness, saying, "Ethan, this is my mom. I told you she's the best." I told you she's the best. I don't know how I got words out. I really don't. Some autopilot deep in me, 38 years of being polite in a body that wanted to hit the floor. Some part of me put out my hand and said, "It's so nice to finally meet you, Ethan. Tyler talks about you all the time." And he shook my hand. His hand was cold. And he said, "You too, Mrs. Doyle." Mrs. Doyle. He'd never called me anything but Rachel in his life. And there it was, my last name, the paperwork, the thing we skipped, landing in the room at the worst possible second in front of my child. And then I turned around and stirred a pot roast that did not need stirring for about 4 minutes straight because I could not turn back around. I could not let Tyler see my face. That whole weekend, 2 days, 2 of the longest days of my adult life, we performed. That's the only word for it. We were strangers. Ethan called me Mrs. Doyle and complimented the food and helped clear the table and was, I have to say, a genuinely lovely guest. And every single second of it was a knife. Because I knew him. I knew how he took his coffee, and I knew what his laugh really sounded like versus the polite one he was using. And I had to sit across my own dinner table and pretend I'd met him 90 minutes ago. And Tyler was so happy. That's what got me. He kept looking back and forth between us like he was hoping we'd like each other. "Ethan's the best, Mom, seriously. He's the reason I passed statistics." "Mom, you got to hear Ethan's impression of our landlord." He wanted his mother and his best friend to get along. That's such a sweet, simple thing for a kid to want. And I had to give it to him while my heart was coming apart, because the alternative, the truth, would have detonated his entire world. And there were these little landmines all weekend. Saturday afternoon, Tyler's showing Ethan old photo albums in the living room. My son going through baby pictures, and I'm in the next room dying. And I hear Ethan's voice go, "Is this your mom? She's... Wow, Ty, your mom's really..." And he catches himself, and Tyler laughs and goes, "Dude, gross, that's my mom." And they both laugh, and I'm standing at the sink with my hands in dishwater, and I can't breathe. Because I know exactly what word he swallowed. I've heard him say it. Just never through a wall. Never with my son laughing beside him. Never as a thing he had to bury alive. And later, the pot roast. Tyler goes, "Ethan, my mom's cooking is unreal, right?" And Ethan looks down at his plate and says, real careful, "Yeah, it's honestly the best I've had in a long time." And it was such a small, ordinary thing to say, and it just about took my legs out. Because he wasn't talking about the roast, and I was the only person at that table who knew it. Then there was the real moment. Saturday night. Everybody else had gone to bed, and I came down for water, and Ethan was in the kitchen, standing at the counter in the dark, and we just looked at each other. First time all day, nobody was watching. And he opened his mouth, and I put my hand up. Just a little, just, not now, not here. And his eyes, God, his eyes were so full. He whispered, Rachel, I swear I didn't know. I swear to you. And I said, I know you didn't. Go to bed, honey. And that honey slipped out, the real one, the one I meant, and we both heard it, and it was the saddest thing I've ever said to anybody. And then he went upstairs, to sleep down the hall from my son, in my house. They left Sunday. Tyler hugged me at the door, told me he loved me, told me the roast was even better than usual. Ethan shook my hand again. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Doyle. I said, any time. Any time. And I watched Tyler's car pull out of the driveway with the two of them in it, my son and the man I'd been falling for, driving back to the apartment they shared. And I shut the door, and I slid down the back of it, and I sat on the floor of my front hall, and I cried in a way I had not cried since the divorce. Maybe worse, because at least the divorce made sense. I waited 3 days. I needed the 3 days to get my head level, because I knew what I had to do, and I knew if I did it while I was still shaking, I'd do it wrong. And on the 3rd day I called him. Not texted, called. He deserved a voice. He picked up on the first ring, like he'd been holding the phone. And before I could say anything, he started. Rachel, I've been going crazy. I don't know what to do. I can't stop thinking about... And I said, Ethan, sweetheart, stop. Let me talk. And I told him, I said, I don't regret one single second of us. I need you to hear that first before anything else. You came into my life at a time when I had convinced myself I was finished, that I was just going to be Tyler's mom and Greg's ex-wife and the lady who runs the front desk, and that the part of me that was a woman, the part that could feel like this, I thought that part was dead. And you woke her up. You reminded me I was still alive in there, that I was still worth talking to for 4 hours, still worth crossing a room for. You have no idea what you gave me. No idea. And I said, but he's my son. He's my son, Ethan, and you're his friend, his roommate. You're the reason he passed statistics. You're going to be at his graduation, and in his wedding photos maybe, and in his life for years, in a way you and I could never survive being. I cannot be the secret you carry into that friendship. I cannot make my child a stranger in his own story. And I will not risk the one relationship in my life that is completely, perfectly good. His trust. That's not a thing I get to gamble. Not even for something that made me this happy. And there was this silence. And then he said, real quiet, I know. I knew before you called. I just needed you to be the one to say it, because I didn't have it in me. And I said, thank you, Ethan, for all of it, truly. Take care of my boy. And he said, always. And that was it. That was the last time. That was about 8 months ago now. Tyler still lives with him. They're still best friends. Ethan still comes up sometimes in Tyler's texts. Ethan says hi. Ethan's coming home with me for the game next month. And every time it lands like a little stone in my chest, and every time I text back, tell him I said hi, and I mean it. I actually mean it. And then I put the phone down and take a breath, and I'm okay. I'm okay. Because here's what I've landed on after all these months of turning it over. I'm not ashamed anymore. That's the part that surprised me. I spent that whole relationship half drowning in shame about it, and now that it's over, the shame's the thing that left. What stayed was the other thing, the proof. Proof that I'm not finished, that 38 is not the end of the road, that this hollow house does not get the final word on who I am, that somewhere in me there's still a woman who can be delighted and delight somebody back and laugh at a fish photo and salt the water right. He gave me that. And then, when the world got complicated, we both did the grown-up thing, the hard thing, The thing that put a 20-year-old kid's happiness ahead of our own. And I'll tell you, doing the right thing didn't feel good. Anybody who tells you it does is lying. It felt terrible. It just felt terrible in a way I could live with. And that's the difference. That's the whole difference, right there. I've started dating again. Slowly. Men my own age this time. I know. There's a guy, actually. Owns a hardware store. 51, widowed, laughs like a drain, terrible taste in music. We'll see. He's kind. I'm learning to trust kind. But every now and then, when the house gets quiet the way it does, I think about a boy who read my whole profile and asked me if I salted the water. And I hope he's happy. I hope he found somebody who gets to keep him. And I hope, someday, at some kitchen table years from now, when it can't hurt anybody anymore, I get to tell my son the truth. That the best friend who got him through college, once, for a little while, made his mother feel like a person again, and that she loved him enough to let him go. That's the whole story. That's all of it. I salted the water, by the way. I always salt the water. Turns out he was right about that, too.
So that's where she chose to leave it. And I'll be honest, I've been sitting with this one. Because it would have been so easy for her to keep that little sealed room, to take the happiness and let her son find out some other day, some other way. Instead, she did the harder thing, the quieter, lonelier, right thing. And she didn't walk away empty. She walked away reminded that she was still fully, completely alive. Here's what I keep coming back to. Sometimes the most loving thing a person can do is let go of the very thing that finally made them feel again. But I want to hear from you on this one. Was she right to end it for her son? Or did she owe it to herself to be happy? Tell me down in the comments. I read them, all of them. And if this story got to you, even a little, do me a favor and subscribe so the next one finds its way to you. I'm Michael. I'll see you in the next story.